I moved into a small apartment building last summer. It was a cheap two-bedroom place and was really my only option considering my low-paying job I had at the time. The building was very clearly not well taken care of, and neither was the room. There was a buildup of mold in several areas, and the place honestly just looked like it was falling apart. Of all these things though, the one thing that stood out the most was the lack of other residents. I'd lived in a couple apartment complexes before moving into this one, and rarely would a room even be available. However, at this place, almost all of the rooms were still available for rent. It was a small complex with only 8 rooms, but during the time I was there, only 2 rooms were occupied. Mine and an older couple's on the first floor. My room was on the 3rd floor, leaving the middle and top floor completely empty. But those floors never truly felt empty. Having lived there for a month at the time, I'd heard on multiple occasions people talking below me. I always believed it was just the older couple, as they were the only ones living below me. Though, strangely, I'd only ever hear a woman's voice, never a man's. And to make things stranger, I'd be able to hear them pretty clearly, even though they were 2 stories below me. It would always sound as though the woman was muttering to themselves indistinctly. It would give me the creeps sometimes when I would wake up and hear the woman muttering to herself below me, but I thought perhaps she was sleepwalking and maybe the vents to my room were connected to theirs, allowing for the sound to travel. But everything only got worse as time went on. 2 months in, with nobody else moved in still, I was walking up the stairs to my room, and as I walked past the 2nd floor, I noticed the door to one of the rooms was open. My curiosity got the better of me, and I took a couple steps towards the doorway to look inside. It was dark and empty, which is exactly what you'd expect of a vacant room. But I got a really bad feeling the closer I got to the doorway, and ended up just continuing upstairs to my room. Later that night though, I was taking the trash down and noticed the door was closed. It was definitely weird, but I didn't know what to really think. I knew nobody lived there, so what could it even be? Maybe the owner of the building was working on the room or something. That was the only thing I could think of anyway. That night, I went to bed early with a clear mind, but woke up sometime in the middle of the night, hearing the woman muttering below me again. Having seen the door below me opened earlier, I was more curious about the mysterious woman this time. I got out of bed, being sure not to make much noise, and leaned my ear against the cold wooden floorboards. Listening, her indistinct mumbling sounded close, but was also more of a whisper. I knew there was no way a whisper could sound so close if it was coming from the old couple's room on the 1st floor. At that moment, realizing this, I began to get nervous. Part of me wanted to go downstairs to see if the door was open again, but I knew I was way too fearful to do that. Now, sitting in bed again, thinking, I started to hear the woman walking around slowly, still talking to herself. It seemed like she was just walking in random patterns in the room below me. After a few minutes, though, she stopped very suddenly. It's safe to say I was terrified, and the woman suddenly going silent almost made it worse, as I no longer knew where she was or what she was doing. But this night would go on to be far more fear-inducing. I sat in bed wide awake for 30 minutes. Beginning to wonder if the woman had somehow quietly left or was possibly just standing in the same spot for the past half hour. Either way, I was too scared to sleep, and that's when I heard the floor creaking again, as someone was walking slowly across the floor. However, this time, it was coming from above me. Soft creaks in the floor slowly made their way through the upstairs room before stopping directly above my bed. Several seconds of terrifying silence passed before the woman's soft whispering came from above me. Then they let out one loud, aching scream, almost sounding as if it were right in front of my face, before the room fell silent again. I was basically in tears, holding my head and trying not to completely freak out. But how could I not? I stayed up until dawn, then made arrangements with my family to stay with them for a while. I paid a fee to end my lease and moved in with my parents while I looked for a new place. The only time I went back was to move my stuff into the moving truck, and as I loaded up one of the last boxes, the old couple came out to say goodbye. I had never really talked to them aside from simple greetings when we were going in or out, but they strangely seemed to be really sad that I was leaving. I'm not sure if they ever experienced anything that I had, but the only thing I could focus on during our brief conversation was how distinct the old lady's accent was, and that it sounded nothing at all like the woman I heard mumbling. After that, I didn't know what to think other than how glad I was to be moving out. All I can say is that I hope I never hear that unknown woman's whispers ever again.